A Very Special Valentine, an original short story.
Girlfriend?
The florist asked cheekily as she handed the freshly arranged bouquet across the counter over to Charlie. It was a vibrant medley of roses, elegantly wrapped and tied, garnished with silk ribbons and organza. "Maybe," he replied with a coy smile.
Anyway, make sure you keep the stems immersed in a vase of clean water to keep the flowers perky,"
reminded the florist. "Will do," said Charlie, jotting it down on the palm of his hand in case he forgot. "Happy Valentine's Day," he chimed as he exited the shop, with an extra bounce in his step that he hadn't felt in a long time. The next thing on the agenda was chocolate. On his way to the confectionery shop, Charlie wondered which mysterious committee it was that had declared chocolate the quintessential Valentine's Day gift. Perhaps it was a ploy by chocolate factories around the world to boost their sales. Or could it be just another excuse that people came up with to eat more chocolate? It didn't matter. The chocolate had to be procured either way. After all, their story had begun with chocolate. In one of Mr. Huntington's classes back in high school, Mary, then the class monitor, had caught Charlie secretly munching on a Hershey's Deluxe Crunchy Bar, a flagrant violation of the school rules. But instead of telling on him, she threw Charlie a look that said, "You are so sharing that with me." And given the extortionary circumstances, he reluctantly broke off a generous piece and passed it to her. Charlie would never forget the look of pure bliss on Mary's face when she received her share of the delectable cocoa morsel. In that instance, he noticed two things about Mary: that she could be bribed with reasonable amounts of chocolate, and that she looked especially pretty when she was smiling. Unfortunately, Mary was unschooled in the art of surreptitious eating, and the crunchy bar was, well, really crunchy, and Mr. Huntington had a sharp ear. The moment she bit into the chocolate bar a little too eagerly, Charlie knew that the game was up. The both of them ended up in detention, and while it was quite embarrassing at the time, they found themselves laughing about the incident not long after. From that day on, whenever Charlie smuggled chocolate into class, he would never fail to bring an extra bar for Mary, not the crunchy type obviously, and he would always be awarded with a sweet, slightly mischievous smile that made his insides somersault a little. Thus, a camaraderie of contraband chocolate was born. Charlie had to suppress a stupid grin as he visited those memories. It all seemed like a lifetime ago. Yet, on this auspicious day, he found himself once again in the familiar situation of buying chocolate for this special person whose heart he so desperately hoped to win. Some things just won't ever change. Third item, the card. Once the roses were placed in a vase as per the florist's instructions, and the assorted chocolates were chilling in the fridge, Charlie set about writing a proper Valentine's Day proposal on the dainty, artisanal card he had purchased from a gift shop a couple of days before. Mary had high standards when it came to romantic literature, so this was no easy task. It had to be short and sweet, grandiose, but personal, profound, yet heartfelt. "Dear Mary," was all he managed to get down before he realized he didn't actually know what to say. A simple, "Happy Valentine's Day" seemed way too generic, but anything too elaborate wouldn't fit onto a single card. Besides, how do you profess your unabashed love to someone you've known for so long without making it weird? A poem, Charlie finally figured, was the solution. Poems were conveniently short, and traditionally the ideal vessel for feelings of affection, given that one was good at writing them, of course. However, about 16 hastily discarded drafts later, Charlie discovered to his mild disappointment that he was no Shakespeare. Throwing his hands up in frustration, he decided at last to abandon any hope of producing even a semblance of high art, and doubled down on the lines of awful poetry that came to him almost effortlessly. Roses are red, violets are blue, though these roses I bought have more than one hue. Don't be surprised, but I think I really like you. I'll feed you enough chocolate so you'll like me too. Charlie giggled to himself like a little boy as he penned the words. Mary would be absolutely appalled. To compensate, he drew a couple of plump heart shapes in red ink for good measure. He shook his head, thinking he might be getting slightly too old for this. The park was already full of couples when Charlie arrived. Some sat together on the benches, having a chat while soaking in the lovely evening weather. Others were taking a stroll along the path, holding hands. Also present were families picnicking on the grass, fitness enthusiasts stretching and jogging around the perimeter, and boisterous children playing some modern variant of the game tag. Mary loved this park. She loved its vastness and greenness, as well as the pleasant vibes created by the people in it having a fun time. Charlie suspected she wouldn't pass up the chance to stop by on her way home from a Sunday book club meeting, even though it wasn't the shortest route. Sure enough, within 5 minutes, Mary had appeared, hugging a stack of books and making her way across the path. She looked beautiful, as always. Charlie's heart was in his throat, protesting. He had never imagined himself pulling off a stunt like this, least of all in public. She was getting closer now. Time to spring the ambush. Charlie walked briskly over to intercept her, holding the flamboyant bouquet behind him so that it was hidden from a line of sight. Fortunately, there were just enough people between them to use as cover, so Mary did not notice him until he was only 10 feet away. The instant their eyes met, she let out a gasp of surprise, nearly dropping her books.
Oh dear God, Charlie! What on earth are you doing here?
She exclaimed. As swiftly and smoothly as he could physically manage, Charlie knelt before his beloved wife of more than half a century. A gallant, almost reckless display of sincerity, in defiance of the pesky arthritis that had been gnawing at his knees for many years. Assistance to get back up may be required in a minute. But now that the sun had barely set, and the roses he held aloft were in full, glorious bloom, and the onlookers were oohing and eyeing, and the early spring breeze felt refreshing but not chilly, and Mary's cheeks blushed to match the romantic palette of the dusk sky, the moment was ripe to ask the all-important question. My dear Mary, will you, for the 57th year running, be my Valentine? Mary contemplated the offer, and the onlookers held their breath. Finally, she spoke, flashing a mischievous smile that Charlie knew only too well.
Depends, really. Have you got any chocolate?